Hi, everyone. Harry here. Okay, we have a second person who has been detained under this extraordinary authority. But the question is whether that authority is constitutional. And it permits the Secretary of State, seems to be the Secretary of State personally, to make a finding that the continued presence in the country of someone who is here legally. We're not talking about even an illegal immigrant, much less the murderous rapist that Trump continually invokes, but don't seem to have anything to do with what they're doing. A guy who is a postdoctorate fellow at Georgetown, name is Badar Khansuri. And the ICE officers came to his door, boom, boom, and spirited him away. And now we have an order from a district court judge saying, do not deport him, freezing the linebackers here. Suri shall not be removed unless and until I issue a contrary order. Okay, so this is the second person, right? We've also had Khalil, who is here legally with a green card, an American wife who's 8 months pregnant and the like, and they did the same finding. So it's a finding that is part of the law. In theory, the law has not really been tested very much. Actually, the biggest test was a district court opinion striking it down as unconstitutional because it gives a Secretary of State too much discretion to just say this sort of stuff, and it represents an excessive delegation of power by Congress. Congress can't just give it to the executive, especially in an unreviewable way. Said this opinion written by Marion Trump Barry, Donald Trump's sister, who it's the actual most detailed treatment of the law that they've acted under in both these cases. Now, it got to continue the sort of ironic historical footnote. It then went up to the court above Marion Trump Barry, where an opinion by then Judge Sam Alito reversed, but having nothing to do with the constitutional analysis. So that constitutional analysis is out there. And I think we're coming to a point where it's going to have to be determined, and that law is going to have to really stand the test as against the possible flaws that Judge Barry identified before. You can think about it, right? On the one hand, if you have an unbelievably dangerous customer, but with no specific crimes or other reasons to yank their visas, you can see wanting to have a Secretary of State to have this special power. On the other hand, if the power isn't constrained, you have the real problem. Like, we know nothing about either of these guys insofar as they should give rise to these special, hugely serious of all the people who are legally here in this country. These two are especially pernicious. It just doesn't seem to be the case. In fact, and speaking in particular about Suri, his sisters come in and says, apparently they don't even have to tell you why. His wife, by the way, also an American, has come in and said, my husband has nothing to do with Hamas. His father seemed to have had some things to do with Hamas, but he's only met his father a couple times. And his wife, at least, is saying this is a real case of a false charge. It's really unjust, and he's being completely railroaded here. And so what the judges said, I think it's true that under this law, you could have a Secretary of State sort of initiate charges and put him under detention, but then I think we're going to find from this judge, and we'll see if it gets affirmed on appeal, he's got to have some rights in habeas corpus or whatever to say, I'm not this guy, I'm not Hamas, you've got it wrong. A sort of analogous situation played out in high drama cases in the Supreme Court in the years after 9/11. It took it that long to make their way to the court. But eventually the court said, and 5-4, and Justice O'Connor writing, so who can say if it'd be the same, that like, you got to give notice and opportunity to be heard. You can't just have an executive, knock on your door, take you away at night, and never have a chance to present to a court a claim that you're not even who they say you are. So that's what's going to play out now. For now, all we have is the assertion of authority, pretty much under cover of night. Boom, boom, boom. They knock on his door in Arlington and take him away. And a very curt order by the judge, and that's going to now set up, a hearing on the case, and it'll first be, I think, not the challenge on the merits, but the question of what sort of challenge on the merits do you get? And the judge, I think will determine, look, I want to find out this, that, and the other. And possibly at that point, the administration will go into its emergency overdrive and say, you can't find out these things. And that very battle of what can be found out will make its way up the ladder of the federal court. But so the question is going to be, will the courts, and probably the higher courts here, say that Rubio could just make this finding and just, in what seems like a Kafka-esque nightmare for someone who's here in the States legally, the authorities could just come in, take him away, and he never has a chance to make and present his claim that, they got the wrong guy. So that's what's going to be happening in the next week or two in this case of Surrey. And Khalil is in a sort of similar position. He was taken away. They got him quickly down to Louisiana, which is where they like to keep these folks, maybe preparatory to flying them out somewhere. And the judge ordered the case back to New Jersey, where it now is, and we're having the same kind of individualized determination. The administration is saying you can't even do that, and they're going to fight that battle. That's the battle of saying a district court can't second guess it at all, and that issue will be joined, and very possibly, since we have not much precedent, nothing at all from the Court of Appeals, this is one that might make its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. In any event, they'll certainly get it. Unless the Court of Appeals gives the administration all the relief they want, they'll certainly get it, will the Supreme Court, on this sort of emergency basis that is the administration's stock in trade. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.